I know how challenging it is to write a book, but I'd like to know, what was your intention? Why did you write the book?
Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much for coming to listen to us. The reason we wrote the book, really simply, is because we thought a book like it didn't exist. We thought, could we create sort of an MBA in a box? Could we do that, given all the stuff that we had learned in the past 10 years, traveling around the world, talking to groups? We did a calculation that we probably talked about 1.25 million people in the past 10 years in groups like this. We've learned a lot. It's all Q&A. And we thought, could we codify it and put it in a book? So that's the simple reason, is we didn't think the book existed. We thought maybe we were the people who could write it.
But, it's always interesting. Husband and a wife is, it's hard being a husband and a wife. I'm one of those parts for me. And what was your process? How did you do it? How did you work together to do it? Did you write one chapter and he another? Did you collaborate in the chapter? Did you decide exactly what the content was? Did you have arguments over what the results were in different times?
All right, I'll answer this one. I think that Jack and I invented this process about 12 years ago, because we started writing together 12 years ago. And when we first decided to write Winning, which came out 10 years ago, we were at a dinner party with Alan Dershowitz, and we announced to all of our friends at the dinner party that we were about to write a book together, and Alan Dershowitz said, "Do you need a divorce lawyer?" Right. Immediately jumping to, and we've actually found it to be a wonderful process. I'll describe it very, very quickly. I'm a writer and editor by trade, so we know what we do well, okay? And I write and edit, and Jack was the business person. So we know what we're going to write about. Typically, we're very planned that way. So say we choose a chapter, and we've done this for books and columns, and so we talk about it until you cannot possibly talk about a topic anymore. We talk about it driving, eating, everything you do, we're talking about this topic. Then after we're done talking about it until everyone around us is going to lose their mind, I go into a room we call the cave, and I close the door of the cave, and in some period of time afterwards, I come out with a first draft. And I then very carefully go and present the first draft to Jack, and I try not to stay in the room while he's reading the first draft. If those of you who are writers know, it's torture to watch somebody reading your writing. And I leave, and I come back, and leave, and come back, and eventually he's done reading the first draft, and I stand there ready to receive my performance review. And the reply goes anywhere from good, which means we have about 15 or 20 more drafts where we're going to be very iterative back and forth, or the dreaded, deeply, deeply dreaded, we have work to do. And that's just the worst line, because we had one chapter in this book, 68 more drafts. Not that I was counting how many exact drafts we were doing, but there were 68. So we go back and forth. It's very iterative. He edits what I've written, I revise, and it goes around and around. I mean, it's a crazy process. The thing that makes it hard is that we're both perfectionists. And two perfectionists together is a dangerous thing. But the book, like being pregnant, eventually there's a baby in the room. And with a book contract, eventually there's a book in the room, and there it is. It's hard to, when I look at it, I cannot believe it actually ever was finished.
So failure and success are partners in the journey of any enterprise all the time. They're close, real close to one another. And in all team sports, we know that. What do you have to say about failure? What do you think, what part does failure have to play in a winning process?
Well, I think the biggest part of failure, again, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out this early. We see failure as the biggest thing you have to do about failure is own it. It's yours. You can never be a victim. You've always got to own it and then try and come back at it to fix it. The worst thing is somebody else caused this, somebody else did that, he or she did this to me. And so winning is the greatest thing in the world. The winner's locker room, and the loser's locker room. Business is a sport. It's no different than any team sport you see that you're involved with every day. And you like having lots of Stephen Currys on your team. Right. And that makes it a lot prettier. So, but owning the problem and then defining what you're going to do about the failure to not do it again, how you get back on the horse is a big deal. We all get knocked on our butts all the time. And the question is, do you stay on your butt and bitch about it, who caused what? Or do you get up and figure out, how do I get around this and get on to the next step?
And for both of you, when you looked at any of those chapters or those sections, did you both reflect maybe a week or a month later when we looked at it and said, wait a minute, this ain't good enough? Did you have any of those?
Absolutely. I mean, we do that all the time. In fact, if we didn't have to get this done by the end, we'd be over it. But the reason this book is some people say, well, it's relatively short. We work like hell to make it short. We don't want to talk a lot. We want to get some points distilled so that people can get at the grist of the whole thing.
But there were definitely chapters, one in particular, where, and actually it's the marketing chapter, a chapter on marketing today. The marketing is just changing so much. It was changing under our feet as we wrote about it. And we kept on learning more. And then we kept on testing the ideas with people who we know who are really smart about marketing. And that chapter, we just kept on thinking was not good enough. And we had to keep coming back at it. Finally, it was done.
So you focus on business success through the team game. You believe in the team game, that collaborative element. But you know that every individual has self-interest. How do you integrate everybody's self-interest into a team and recognize they also have their personal interest?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. When you talk about a business, you describe where are we going, why are we going there, how are we getting there, and then what's in it for me. That's, I think you're talking about the what's in it for me part of it, the back end. And what we try and do in the how you're going to get there is you define behaviors. For example, people say, how do you get teamwork in a individual business game? And you make teamwork one of your behaviors. You define 5 or 6 key behaviors. So if you've got a horse's ass that doesn't want to have teamwork, they can't be on the team. So you define the rules of the road in how you're going to get there. And one of the problems we have in business all the time is people talk about cultures and behaviors and all this stuff, and then they promote a jerk that doesn't have any of them. And that ends up blowing their speech. A promotion is worth 10 to 100 speeches, because everybody in your organization knows everybody else, and they have their views of them, and they know them better than you do, most likely. So that when you make a move on a promotion, you absolutely are defining who you are. So you've got to be very careful. You get the behavior, you reward and measure. And if you want bad behavior, the biggest problem comes from behaviors and results. Everybody loves to talk about culture, behaviors, sharing values, all this stuff. Excuse me, honey. Sharing all these values and doing all this. But in the end, they're always saying, give me $1 more for the quarter.
Right.
Hang in there, one more, let me grind out one more. And the person that grinds out the one more ends up too often getting recognized, even though they may be kissing up, kicking down, doing all kinds of brutal countercultural things, but they're getting you the number. Give me one more quarter. Right. You know, and that's a killer. My view is you get the behavior you reward, you define it, and then you promote according to it.
Very cool.
I mean, I think the problem comes when people think about an organization, who are the stars, right? And so the question that you ask, which is how can you have big stars when you want teamwork at the same time? And you know, what you got to say is your behaviors, whether it's teamwork, urgency, speed, kindness, sharing of ideas, have to matter as much as your actual results. How your commission, you know, how much commissions you bring in, how many clients you bring in, whatever it is in your business. They both have to matter, and the way you reinforce that is with who gets promoted and who gets the good assignments and who gets the big bonuses.
Peter, I think what you got to look at is you look at performance on 2 axes. On one axis are the hows, the behaviors, sharing ideas, boundaryless behavior, promoting people, having a generosity gene, which we'll talk about. But having these behaviors that you want. And then on the bottom axis, there are results, numbers. So then you draw, if you will, 4 quadrants. In the upper right quadrant, you get very high performance on the bottom line. and high values, just the behaviors you want. That's easy. Onward and upward, promote them forever. In the bottom lower left quadrant, you got bad behaviors and bad results. That's easy. Get them the hell out of there. And then you got the third category, which is high behaviors, great behaviors. They're on your team. You like the way they act. You like the way they lead. You like the way they behave. But they're having a tough time on results. You've got to give them a second chance, a third chance, because they're role models in the behavior you want. But again, back to that point, it's the fourth one that kills the company and kills the culture. The one with the great results and the terrible behaviors. And too many people hold on to that person. And that person kills the fundamentals of a company.
That's really well said. It's true, but it's so habituating and addictive when you see that success at the bottom to let that go. And even the people that don't like them, who benefit with their bonuses and overall company stock, with it, look at it and think how to balance it. So it's a real tough one.
But when you deal with it, it opens the eyes of the whole organization.
Right.
As soon as they're gone.
It's incredible. They can't believe you've done it. You've gotten rid of that person, and the whole place lights up. It's incredible.
We used to call that a ritual killing. I never did. You write about the inevitable crisis, whether market or personal driven. Take us through a crisis you've had where you employed the tenets you espouse to survive and triumph.
Well, I'll give you I've had a couple of significant crises. I've had 1,000 smaller ones. But in my second year in the company, I was a chemical engineer in a laboratory, and I was working on a new plastic. And I blew the roof off the building, had a massive explosion, all hell broke loose, had a fire. And all of a sudden, my boss in this development operation didn't know me anymore. And he wanted to send me to New York to explain it to his boss in New York what exactly I had done. So I got in my Volkswagen, and I drove the 120 miles to New York to explain in great detail what happened to me. And what happened to the chemical reaction that I blew up. And the guy I met in New York, turned out, I was scared to death. I thought it was all over. I was making $10,000, and I thought this was the end. I get down there, and this guy starts asking me in a Socratic method, why did it happen? Do you know how to fix it? How do you go after it? What do you do next? The nicest guy in the world. So what did I learn from that? I learned never kick anybody when they're down. Kick them when they're swelling instead of growing. Absolutely. But don't kick them when they're down. And that was a big learning for me in a behavior pattern, for example. And I got through that mess and all went well. But then I made a really botched up move when I bought Kidder Peabody, an investment bank. Now, we're an electrical company, heavy in manufacturing and financial services, but not investment banking. So our culture was sharing ideas, growing people, promoting people. The Kidder Peabody culture was my bonus, my bonus, my bonus. They didn't give a damn about anything else but their bonus. And so we had a lot of problems. We had some cheating go on. We had some other things. And the Wall Street Journal for 17 months out of 24 basically called me a jackass. How stupid I was, how dumb I was. And they couldn't get enough of that program because we were riding very high. We were full of ourselves, and they really enjoyed the hell out of pulling down the situation. And so we went through it. But what did we do? We were transparent as can be. We let everybody know exactly what happened, why it happened, what we did wrong, and they couldn't quite handle it because we laid it out clear as a bell. We took action on the people that did the problem and eventually got through it, sold the company to another investment bank, and they went on to give us a great return because they did a good job with it. They knew it better than we knew it. But the point was we were totally transparent. Totally transparent. What we did wrong, I was stupid, I took the heat. It was all nice and clear. But once you do that, they're dead. They've lost all their ammo. If you call yourself a jerk, they don't have much left to do. and you get out there in a transparent fashion, it really works.
So let's take your crisis management tenets and put them through the Sony hacking experience and see that filter in use and examine the process using your WAC recovery device. In other words, you looked at the whole Sony experience. How would you narrate that?
One of the things about the Sony hacking event was one of the things we say about crisis management is right up front, along with owning it and transparency, is you have to force your imagination to come to grips with it's going to be so much worse than you can possibly imagine. There's no containing a crisis. It's going to be so much worse than you think. The problem that Sony faced was that who could possibly have the imagination? They were the first ones that had this experience. And so they were facing into it, and we don't know the intimate details. We just know what everyone else has read, and it seemed like they tried to get ahead of it, and it seemed like they worked very hard to communicate with employees, which is the #1 group you should be communicating with during a crisis. But how could they possibly know how badly it was going to keep on? I mean, there was just sort of an unfolding every single day. But part of managing a crisis, be it personal, like in your own career, or organizational, is understanding there is no containment. You're going to be called every name, every insult. It's going to get so much worse than you could possibly imagine, and there's going to be blood on the floor. Somebody's going to pay with their job, and it might be you, or it might be the person sitting next to you, but these things usually don't go down without with a ritual killing. Now, one of the exceptions to this, and I've sort of been watching it since the beginning because we do write a lot about crisis management, is Lufthansa had this horrible, tragic case of that pilot flying into the side of the mountain, and I predicted that the CEO was going to be the one who paid with his job, and that still hasn't happened. So I'd be interested to see how that one unfolds. But if you think back to almost every corporate crisis, someone pays, and maybe it's not always the person who should pay, but someone pays.
I'm a good pal with Under Armour CEO Kevin Plank, a really phenomenal company. And he went through an Olympic trial of his own, you know, with the speed skating outfit that they said didn't work, and all of a sudden he was roundly embarrassed. Share your principles of storm prep. What is storm prep, and why and how does it work?
Well, storm prep is basically not being out there for the first time in your crisis. For example, being on social media with a positive message well before the issue. Being out there talking about who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in. And Kevin Plank is a perfect example of this. This is a tremendously outspoken, clear-thinking CEO. And he was always out there. His whole game is he gets everybody up in the morning and said, see that map? There's Oregon. And there's Nike, and we're going to get those guys. Every day, Under Armour is out doing that. And he rallies the team around this game every day. I'm going to nail Nike, nail Nike. So he's got this vision, and his team is all energized around winning. And as a result of that, he gets nailed in this speed skating message because the U.S. team didn't do very well with his uniforms on. But what did he do? He doubled down. He signed a 5 or 10-year contract with the U.S. skating team to design costumes for the next 5 Olympics. Instead of hiding, ducking down, he was transparent. This didn't work this time. We don't think it was the uniform, but here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to double down. I'm going to pay this fee to the U.S. Olympic team, and I'm going to sponsor them for the next 5 Olympics.
The day to start defending yourself is not the day the crisis begins. So we have this attitude that, and we actually say it to individuals as well as corporations, that you cannot find your voice the day people are wondering who you are. Your voice has to be out there and established. We even tell our children who are all in their 20s to have a digital footprint all over the place on every platform, even if it's not your shtick, just to have your voice out there before you're needing it. Oh, suddenly people wondering who the heck is this person? You're already established.
Yeah, that's a good mantra for sure. I believe everybody in a company has 2 jobs. If you don't take care of the company's job, you get fired. If you don't take care of your own job, you fire yourself, in a sense. You write about career management. How do you balance these 2 pulls in having a successful career?
Well, I don't think the company is really your focus. Your focus is how well you do. Your job is to always over-deliver. Not think about the next career move, not think about the next job. Get results that are absolutely staggering in the job you're in. And every time you have a meeting with the boss, make sure the boss leaves the meeting smarter than the boss was when they came to the meeting. That's an objective, that you broaden the horizon. The thing wrong with students fresh out of school is they get an assignment and they do the homework because they've been doing that for years. In the method we teach now, the professor blasts out at you and the student regurgitates back the answer, and that's the problem. You've got to give, you see an assignment, how do you make it this big? Rather than just do the assignment. And if you go in with a headset, I'm going to enlighten the people in the audience that are listening to my report on this, give them a new perspective, a wider perspective, a broader perspective, and let your career take care of itself from that. You're much better off than plotting a career.
Yeah, we're just very old-fashioned in this way, and that if you do your job really, really well, it usually comes out in the wash.
We know what a CEO is, a CTO is, a CFO is, and a COO is. What is a chief meaning officer? Is this his role to give context and purpose to the organization's process, or do we answer the questions invariably asked by executives, what's in it for me?
No, we use the word chief meaning officer, not to get in another box on the organization chart, as the job of every leader. Here's the problem. Now, on the West Coast, this problem is a little less troublesome than it is when you're going through the Middle West and you're stopping in Cleveland, Kansas City, Chicago, and you're seeing Rust Belt companies after the 2008 recession. Gallup runs a poll every quarter. 12,000 Americans are surveyed who go to work. They have not had a change in the last 20 quarters since 08. When 65% of the people in the company say they are not engaged in the work. They come to it. Now imagine if you believe business is a game and the team with the best players wins. Imagine, Peter, if you had your teams and 65% of them stayed in the locker room or 65% stayed in the dugout, you would have somewhat of a difficult time winning the game. So the job of every leader is to give work purpose. Why are they there? What's in it for them? A better job, a better life, a better career, more money, more praise. But the job of a leader is to give work purpose so that these people come to work excited about being it. We like to say, your job is to make your group, no matter what the size of it is, the cool kid's basement, where everybody wants to hang out. You want to hang with those people. It's fun. You're having action. It's the place to be. And therefore, you've got to give meaning to that job. People want to have meaning in their job.
It's sort of easier when you're like in a very, if you're in a, anyway, my dad's an architect. I think some of you are architects. I think architects actually, they understand they're creating spaces where people's lives are going to thrive. They're going to create this environment. And so making meaning of what you're doing probably comes naturally, just like it does in a lot of medical businesses. We're saving lives. But there are other people who they are running teams where you're a tiny part of a much larger process, and you've got to get in there every day and talk to your people, no matter how large your team is, about the meaning of their work. Leaders make meaning out of the work, and so we think, and that's not just the CEO. That's every leader, even if you just have 3 people on your team. To make me, I used to, when I was recruiting people to HBR, I had 60 editors and writers working for me, and when I had to hire somebody new, I had all sorts of ways to draw them in. I could have said, we have fantastic pay and benefits, which we did, because we were part of a big, rich university. But I found that I got the best people when I said, come work for me and help me change the world by making business better. And the people who really responded to that were the people who I wanted on my team, because we shared the same meaning of the work.
So 30 years in the gold watch as a calling is over. If you proclaim, hang on to your best employees, isn't that a conflict?
No, why would it be a conflict? You want to do everything to keep these people there. You want to reward them in the soul with praise. You want to reward them in the wallet with cash. You want to make their lives just so much better. Now, eventually, as they grow and grow and grow, they will leave. Today, we have almost 60 CEOs of major companies who work for me, who I kept with us. And as time went on and they grew, they're out running Boeing, they're out running Honeywell, they're out running Home Depot. That's the biggest turn on you can have. Having them grow into those jobs is the most exciting thing imaginable. They're great friends, we vacation together, but they're no longer on our little team. They've got their own pond to play in. And that is one of the great thrills of leadership. It is the thing you want to do. You want to make people with my size and my hair look like they're 6'4" with hair. You want to just constantly drive that theory. It's a big deal. And when you do that, they get their oats and go. But that's what repots the plant. People come behind them. It's not at all in conflict.
A couple more questions and we'll open it up to the group. There's a famous Jamaican song which has a lyric, don't worry, be happy. You say fun is an important part of a successful team and business, and you say worry is too. Can you explain that paradox?
Yeah, it is sort of a paradox. Look, if work is not fun, something is terribly wrong. I mean, you spend so many hours working, and if it's not fun, something's wrong. It's wrong with you, or it's wrong with your leader, it's wrong with the dynamic, there's no alignment, something's wrong, but you cannot possibly have a life where you go into work. Now, look, there are periods of work where it's not fun because everybody's got their, but I'm talking about in general, if you're not loving work and finding it fun, that's a problem. And it's part of a manager's job to make sure that there are the elements there, that it's fun. And if you're not a manager, to sort of ask the question, why is it not more fun here? And alignment helps that. Now, we do also talk about worry.
Paranoia.
Well, there's two different things. There's worry and then there's paranoia. We have a good friend, we write about her in the book. She runs her own company after a long time in corporate America, started her own thing. And she called us one night and she said, I'm really worried, but I'm just neurotic. And we said, actually, really good leaders chase that worry and they find out what they're worried about and they identify it and they don't put it away saying, I'm just neurotic. You can worry really productively. And when you're worried about something, you've got to figure out why and then investigate to know if your inner voice is telling you something. Then beyond that, there's paranoia, which Jack is in love with as a concept, which is just with the competitive world the way it is your job to have your eyes facing outward. Too often, you're in a company for a while, you start looking in, and you start thinking about office politics, you start thinking about your own career, you start thinking about the client obsessively, but you've got to be looking out there at the competitive landscape saying, who is going to come and get us tomorrow? You know, are we on top of the technology? Who is the competitor we don't expect? And that kind of paranoia is, today more than ever, utterly necessary.
And now that there are two things about happiness. Sometimes you can get stuck in what we call career purgatory, where you've got a boss that's going nowhere, you've got a boss that isn't interested in promoting you, you've got a company that's not growing. What you've got to do there is not fall into the negative behaviors. You've got to keep a positive attitude and put a time frame on it. We say you pick a year, 2 years, you might have family considerations, money considerations, but you got to get the hell out of there. You can't stay there because it's a defeating vortex. All you start doing is talking to each other about how bad things are. Right. So you put a time frame when you're in purgatory. I'll give this 2 years. I'll over-deliver. I'll do everything, but I'll have a positive attitude every day I'm in here. I won't be bitching while I'm in purgatory. I'll have my own plan to deliver results, and if they don't recognize it, I'm bagging it. I'm getting out of here. And too many people stay in career purgatory, hang in there, and then self-defeating because you get so negative, you keep driving the thing down. So if you're in career purgatory, God bless you, fight. And pick a time and get out of there. Pick a time frame. Don't stay there because you can't stay there with a negative attitude. It kills you.
I love that, active in your own rescue. I think it's really cool.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. Last question. You shout out for innovation at every level all the time. What is both the attitude and the aptitude necessary to accomplish that?
I think it's a cultural thing, Peter. One of the problems we see all the time, every time a new CEO shows up, they go start blowing about, we're going to be the most innovative company in the world. We want innovation everywhere, okay? We're going to be innovative. Well, what does that do to 98% of the crowd? Turns them off. I'm not Steve Jobs. Yeah. I'm not Thomas Edison. I'm not Bill Gates. What do I do in this place? I'm not. What you got to get is change that mindset. Take those people that are that and hopefully give them all the rope in the world to go out and try things. But on the other hand, give everybody the job of innovation. Everybody come to work every day finding a better way. There's a better way to do your job. Your job is to come to work every day to find that better way so that everybody participates and you celebrate little victories in customer service, little victories over here in a factory, little victories in an office. You celebrate the hell out of incremental improvements so everybody is an innovator. And they don't go to the sidelines and say, innovation, that's somebody else's job. No, it's my job. Everything you do every day, you can do better. Your job is to find out how to do it. And grab that opportunity and show the world you can do it. You're an innovator.
They're perfect examples, both of them, of attitude and aptitude working together in their lives and their careers. I mean, I'm smiling. I admire it so much because it's really, you know, wonderful to see, and then it's wonderful to see you share. So it's opening up. This is your chance to open up and ask them questions. And you'll run this?
Yeah, I'll bring the microphone to you. A quick reminder, questions generally start with a W or an H and sometimes a D. Only Peter gets to ask follow-up questions, and there is no such thing as a two-part question. Where is our first question?
Boy, there's a rule, maker.
There's a rule.
Hi, my name is Eddie Turner, and I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Welch. I worked for General Electric for 16 years, and I have to say that everything you did with your management, opening everything up for women and people of color, and because of your leadership, I have my own business, quite successful, living your...
Cheers.
Absolutely, yay,
And
great.
Susie, I have to say congratulations, because I really thought when I was 22 I was going to marry him.
Oh. Not the only one. You're not the only one, my friend.
That was good.
Thank you.
Jack, I had an emailed question come in. You've had a lot of success. Any regrets?
You know, it's very hard to say that an Irishman from Salem, Massachusetts, who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, went to school for $50 a semester, ends up with this job preaching here in front of all these people, and I have a lot of regrets. I'm one lucky guy. A lot of things bumped my way, and I got lucky. I mean, you don't get to these jobs without a lot of luck. You get out of the pile. I was one of 430,000 people and an engineer, and I was in the lowest level you could be in when I started, and 20 years later I was running it. But if I had a regret, it would be I didn't act fast enough times. How many times in your life do you think, oh, I wish I waited 6 more months before I did that? It just doesn't happen. You know, I wish I acted on that employee, or I wish I acted on something else. Speed, and today, speed is exponentially more important than it was then. So I'd say without question, I'd say I never acted fast enough when I look back at almost every decision.
Good
Yes.
morning. Thank you both for making it out. I run a team of a marketing team, and every Monday I oversee my team members and give them mentoring. My question to you is, how do you balance that kind of positive praise versus the negative, like this is your responsibility, like enough is enough? You know, that balance when it comes up again.
Well, look, I think one of the things that we wrote this book for is when we've been around talking to this 1.25 million people, we always ask, and we'll try it here this morning, how many of you know exactly where you stand in your company? What your career looks like, what your boss thinks of you, and where they're going to, and where you can go. How many of you know, how many of you, raise your hand, feel
You know
comfortable
exactly where you stand.
where you stand in the company and what your future holds? Raise your hand. That's about right.
Yeah.
10%.
10,
Right.
10 to 15%.
Right.
And that is frightening. And so what you do in your job, I did it anyway, you can try your own way. Every quarter, I would sit down with a little note card with a handwritten note. Here's what I like about what you're doing. Here's what you can do to improve. And have a great discussion, 3 or 4 points every quarter, so that nobody is ever surprised. If somebody gets let go in your company and they are surprised, you are responsible. You own that responsibility. And the thing that we talk about all the time is love them as much on the way out as you love them on the way in. You have a job. You own every failure. You hired them, you brought them in, you're managing them, you're coaching them. You are responsible, not them. You can call them stupid, they don't know what's going on. That's because you didn't tell them. You didn't help them, you didn't coach them. So you have an enormous challenge to be transparent. It is so hard to do. Companies just don't do it. It kills you. And that is such a critical element of doing your job. And it frightens me how much. Let's take a little example like celebrations. Why don't companies celebrate more? You know, I was in the job as CEO for 21 years. I was preaching every day. Celebrate every little victory. Bring a keg in. Do this, whatever. But have fun. Celebrate the little victories. I could never get enough of it. And the last week I was in the job, I was at our education center. We had 150 people or so there in the classroom, and I always went to every class. And I asked them, now this is 21 years later, I asked them, how many of you have celebrated in the last 6 months, and how many of you feel you've celebrated enough? I didn't get half of the hands. Now, can you imagine the last week I'm there, you'd think they'd throw the guy a bone and raise their hand and say, yeah. Why they won't do it is if I celebrate this gentleman in the front right here, people are afraid you'll be offended because you're doing good work. Why are we celebrating his achievements? People don't want to face that explanation of why one person's doing something and the other isn't. It's a crazy cultural thing, and we've investigated it 90,000 ways. People don't celebrate individual performance because they can't explain to the others why they're not being celebrated. And that's one of your jobs, is being transparent and letting everybody know where they stand and why that achievement was a real role model for the rest of you. Role model management is something you've all got to think about. When you see something you like, get a band out. Make a tambourine, whatever. Make noise and make something happen around that behavior. Then the rest of the crowd will do that. But if you hide it, you won't get it. It won't spread like a virus. And you want good behavior to spread like a virus.
Good morning.
Las Vegas loves winners. They celebrate winners. You'd think they wouldn't, but they go crazy because winners make other people
play.
I want to be that.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for being here today and sharing your knowledge with us. My name is Oscar Menjivar, and I'm the CEO and founder of TXT, Teens Exploring Technology, where we teach young inner city boys how to become technology entrepreneurs. And my question today is, in terms of hiring and bringing the good people on board, the right people on the bus, I remember, Jack Welch, you said one time that one of the biggest mistakes you probably made was hiring those from top universities or those schools, and you were looking through resumes and you thought you had the right team. And I was wondering, has that changed today in this new century, or has that continued being the same thing for you and the experience that you had?
Look, hiring is the hardest thing you ever do. Getting that right is a brutal thing. The biggest thing we try and teach people, we have a school, the Jack Welch Management Institute. The biggest thing we try and teach young people, they're not young, they're middle managers, but we try and teach them that it's okay to not have a great hire because it's so hard. When I first started, I probably got it right 40 to 50% of the time. As I stayed there for 30 or 40 years, I got it right 75% of the time, and I was hiring people that I knew. It's so hard because you never know how somebody's going to behave in the next job. And one of the things you have to do is you have to pick your own screen. I used a very simple screen. Energy, energize, edge, make the decisions, yes, no, and execute, get it done, all with a passion and caring. And I use that screen to try and interview people. Everybody's got their own screens. Google has got all kinds of analysis going on now as to how to hire people, and they're getting it wrong a significant amount of the time. Just know that when you're out looking for the characteristics you're looking for, if you don't get it right, it's okay. Just remember, love them on the way out as much as you love them on the way in. Don't make the mistake of being embarrassed by hiring. That is the biggest mistake I see out there. Somebody hires a turkey. They think it's a reflection of them. No, you join a long crowd of people that have hired turkeys. Your job is not to try and do their work, cover it up, hide. Your job is to come clean and talk to the people, give them a chance, show them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and then take care of them on the way out. Make a friend as they leave if they don't measure up. But don't be embarrassed. No, it's the hardest job in business, in my opinion. It is the hardest job in business, hiring great people.
My question is for Jack. Thank you so much for being here and sharing. My question to you this morning is, in your busy life, I know you have thousands and thousands of things to do and places to go and people to see. How do you keep yourself organized, prioritize your time, and maximize your time?
Not very well. I don't have any formula. Relative chaos, okay?
Yeah.
Sort of focused chaos.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tammy Holzman. How are you? Okay, it's a little hard to stand here. So I was never a great student, although I was a very successful business development executive. And I always said I'm writing a book actually on it. I'm the C student in the C-suite. How much value do you put on EQ versus IQ?
I think it depends on the game you're going to play. I think if you're going to be a coder, developing a new search engine or something in the back, I think IQ plays a huge role in that. I think if you're going to be leading people, I tend to want more EQ than IQ. And ideally, you get a little bit of both. But I think it depends on the assignment. Peter, did you have a reaction to that?
No, I think that's well said. You know, it's always that balance between the two. If you can't manage the emotion and you're just managing information, it's going to be a cold comfort in most businesses.
Right.
A few years ago, I was moderating the Microsoft Summit, and I was lucky to have Jeff Bezos on my panel, and I asked him basically the same question. He said, really, all I want are people who are right. And so I said, you mean smart? And he said, no. I said, right. And it's an interesting thing, because, I mean, that rightness is about being smart but having wisdom, and wisdom comes from emotional intelligence. So you know it when you see it. You want both, I guess.
Thank you. John Holborn. I'm an executive recruiter. On my website, it says, if you hire the right people, you've won the game. I think there's somebody in this room who knows where that came from. What are the two things that you look for when you want to promote someone to a senior position?
Well, I look for somebody who is transparent and somebody who has and we have in this book something I think is we think is important. It's called the generosity gene. I look desperately for the generosity gene. Now, Suzy will argue it's not a gene. I don't know if it is or not, but it's a characteristic, let's say. And I look for people who love to see people promoted, who love to grow people, who love to share ideas that they get, don't steal ideas. You've all worked for different bosses. You've worked for generous, spirited bosses, and you've worked for SOBs, skinflints, okay? And it's a lot more fun, and you'll do a lot more for that person who will go the extra mile for you, who is caring about your career, your growth. And you want to be that person. You want to be the person that turns the team on. And they know you've got their back. They know that if they take a risk, you'll be with them. You won't say, I don't know who did that. And there are bosses like that. And they will love to shower you with stock bonuses, with equity. They get turned on by it. We used to sit on Friday. We had 60,000 people with stock options, 60,000. And we would sit around Friday afternoons, and we'd look at the big fat IBM printouts that would come out, and we'd see an engineer in Tupelo, Mississippi, in a motor plant, making $90,000 a year, cashed in $600,000 of options. We'd all high five. What a weekend they're going to have. You know? I mean, it was just a total turn on to all our people to see the stock went up 5,000%. All these people participated, had life-changing events. It was incredible. And all our people loved it. They were fighting to give people more. And that's the type of boss you want. And I hired for that. I always hired for somebody who bragged about how many people got promoted under him or her, how many people that they changed the lives of. That's what you want. This if you think of your bosses all through your career, that generosity gene, that person is the one you would go the extra mile for. You just would. And if you're working for somebody, and I've had both kinds, and it ain't as much fun, I'll tell you, with one of them.
The one thing I would say is the reason why Jack made this aside, that I always interrupt that it's not a gene, is that I feel like if you're thinking about yourself as a boss and you're saying, well, I'm just not that way, maybe I don't have the gene, we have seen people develop in themselves just with the awareness that maybe they're too tight, that they are not generous, and they've learned to check their impulse that's not generous. And so I do believe that this is not a set in stone thing. You can become a person who demonstrates the generosity gene.
Okay, I'm reading going to reformulate a question that came in via email. About a year ago, we hosted John Mackey from Whole Foods on the subject of conscious capitalism. Actually, interestingly, Peter is who interviewed him. Jack, would you comment on given a lot of credit for increasing the shareholder value of a company? Is that the most important thing? Would you comment on conscious capitalism?
Well, when your employees are your #1 share owner, it sure as hell is nice, okay? And that's why you want to spread the wealth to lots of employees. By far our largest employees. Here's what I think you do in a company. There are 3 measurements you have to know. One is employee engagement. We measured employee engagement every month. We started out in the 30s. We ended up in the 90s. An incredible number of people just totally turned on about the company. Secondly, customer satisfaction through an NPS score, Net Promoter Score. We do that. We do it in our school now with our students. Our students are our customer. They're not our faculty. Our students are. And then finally, cash flow. You get those 3 measurements right, you win the game. And you don't have to argue about conscious capitalism. Your employees are winning, your customers are winning, and in the end, your share owners are a product of the success of the employees and the customer satisfaction. And cash flow gives the share owners their due. But you don't get cash flow if you got an unengaged employee base and an unhappy customer base. That's my answer to that question.
And our final question for the morning?
My name is Jeremy Fremont, and I'm curious, when it comes to age differences, going into a business partnership relationship, what are your thoughts about it? Can it work if there's a 30-year gap going into business?
Depends on who the 2 people are.
Well, could you answer what you should look for as far as what you believe is going to be a successful business venture?
Do you really like each other?
Okay, comes down to do you really like each other? Yeah, we do.
That's a big one.
Well,
okay.
That's one. The other one is, what do you each bring to the party? in any partnership, there's got to be, whether it's age or geography or anything else, everybody's got to bring their fair share to the partnership or else it becomes embittered. I've seen it 1,000 times. You're not bringing your equal share to the partnership. So do you think you can bring as much as the senior person can? And what do you expect? What do you each expect from each other? I'd lay those ground rules out right up front so that there's no misunderstanding, because that's what always gets in the way of any joint venture, of any of these games. Who's bringing mutual interest to the party and who's bringing the most? Perfect. Good luck to you.
Okay, with
Thank
that,
you.
thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, everybody.
Suzy.
Thank you.